The Tennessee Titans have agreed to terms with 15 undrafted free agents, a pretty big class, all things considered. We're going to go through each of the guys now, talk about who has the best chance to make the roster and even possibly make an impact in year one. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Oh, welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo, and today we're going to break down the Titans UDFA class. But before we get to that, let me remind everyone that this podcast is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. Sinkers Beverages has a ginormous walk-in beer fridge. If you are a beer connoisseur like Justin Melo here is, you're going to want to check out this beer fridge. Huge selection of beer. Or if you're not a beer guy or gal, huge selection of bourbon, wine, spirits, everything you could ask for at Sinkers Beverages. Head to sinkersbeverages.com or check the link in this podcast description to sign up for the In-Crowd. In-Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, early access to barrel releases, exclusive events, and more, so you don't want to miss out. Join the Sinkers Beverages In-Crowd today. Justin?
I'm glad you called me a beer connoisseur. I just had an order of like 15, 20 beers shipped to the house this morning. A whole bunch of stuff I haven't tried. Excited. I wish it was coming from Sinkers. It's not, unfortunately, but I'm excited to get into them.
You don't think they ship to Toronto?
I don't think, I'm going to have to check with them, but I don't think they do.
Yeah, so head over to Sinkers Beverages, check everything out. All right, Justin, let's break down this UDFA class. I think to start here, I'm just going to run through the whole list, all 15 guys, and then we can go back through each one and talk about their chances to make this roster and, you know, what they sort of bring to the table. So Titans signed...
Before you do that,
yeah.
I want to give our listeners something to look forward to. Why are you listening to this? I'm going to be giving you some insider info that you don't have on some of these guys, stuff that you do not know regarding the Titans' interest in them, how it came about, yada, yada. I spent hours the other day compiling this list, talking to different independent sources, and getting together some really good information for you guys.
Nice, and that's why our listeners come to the Music City Audible podcast. So let's run through the list here. Titans signed running back Jabari Small, local guy out of the University of Tennessee. I'm sure most Titans fans will be very familiar with him. Also signed Javier Gadlin, an offensive lineman out of Liberty. Steven Stilianos, a tight end from Iowa. Robert Javier, DB from Towson. Khalid Duke, defensive end from Kansas State. Dillon Johnson of the college football national champion runner-ups, running back out of Washington. David Martin Robinson, another tight end out of Temple. Braden Narveson, a kicker out of NC State, who I can't wait to talk about because I think that this finally might be the guy that the Titans have been searching for years. We'll get into that. Cole Spencer, offensive guard out of Texas Tech, one of the more high-profile UDFAs that joined the Titans this year. Gabe Jeudy-Lally, a DB out of Tennessee who also spent some time at Vanderbilt, another guy most of our fans will probably be familiar with. Brian Dooley, offensive lineman out of Eastern Michigan. Isaiah Iton, D-line from Rutgers. Rod Gattison, a cornerback from Western Carolina. Keaton Ellis, a defensive back from Penn State. And Jordan Terrell, a third running back UDFA out of Barton College. So Justin, let's start at the top of this list here with Jabari Small, the running back from Tennessee.
Yeah, this is a super undersized guy, right? I'm just going to call it what it is. 5'8", 198 pounds. Not a lot of play strength here. You know, he benched only 10 reps on the bench. The 40, and I'm just giving it to you straight. Like, at that size, it's not good enough at 4'5'9". I think you'd like that to be faster when you're 5'8". 198. The splits were good, though, which is interesting. So I don't know if it's just on the back end he struggled, because 257 and 155 splits on that 40. So the splits were actually quite good historically. The vert was quite good, 36 inches. That's pretty good. The broad was just, I'd say maybe average to below average, 9'9". He was a rotational guy this past year, rushed for 475 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's an undersized scat back, but again, I think the 40 time, you'd like it to be a lot faster at that size. I'm going to give it to you straight on all these guys. There's a reason most of them go undrafted, right? Like, it's the nature of the beast. But he did make some exciting plays at Tennessee. I think he plays a little bit better than he tested, a bit faster than he tested. But certainly the numbers are probably largely why he went undrafted. The testing numbers and the size, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. My question is, the Titans have a pretty crowded running back room here, having brought in 3 UDFA running backs to go along with Tajay Spears, Tony Pollard, Hassan Haskins, Julius Chestnut. There's a crowded room. Do you think Jabari Small projects more as a special teams guy, or is he going to actually compete to be an RB3, RB4 type of player?
I think he'd have to be a special teams guy. Like, do they even keep 4 running backs this year? I don't think they do.
That's a big question.
Yeah, I think they only keep 3, most likely. But I think that third spot is equal fair competition, right? Like Hassan Haskins, after the whole off-field thing, like he's not guaranteed anything. Certainly Chestnut, like I think all these guys, the 3 UDFAs, Chestnut and Haskins, they should all be entering camp on equal footing, fighting for one spot. It's going to be one of those 5 guys to be RB3, so Jabari Small will have a chance to prove his worth.
Yeah, and I think to win that job, whoever it is has got to prove that they can play special teams, or else there's not going to be a role for them on this team, because keep a third running back that doesn't contribute in that category. Anything else on Jabari Small, or should we move on to Xavier Gadlin?
No, I'll move on to Gadlin here, the interior offensive lineman for Liberty. He's very experienced, so he was at the Shrine Bowl, I believe it was. He played guard, tackle, and center at the Shrine Bowl, all 3 positions. He used to play at Tulsa. You want to talk about how versatile this guy is? Let me give you his position breakdown during the 2022 season, okay? 368 snaps at left guard. I should have led with where he played more. 504 snaps at right tackle and 50 snaps at left tackle. He played all 932 snaps on offense during the 2022 season. He's moved around as necessary. A lot of tackle in his background, even at Tulsa. He's not going to be a tackle in the NFL. He tested very poorly, does not have the foot speed to play. He had a 5'5", 140, a 24-inch vertical, and an 8'8" broad. They're almost unheard of, right? The numbers are. But he's a good player on film. This is a guy, fun fact for you. I actually watched his tape with an NFL agent months ago. Just total, an NFL agent, former NFL player. Just total fluke. This was one of the guys who watched on tape. And now he lands with the Titans as UDFA. He's going to play guard. He's going to play center. Look, where's his route to making the roster? Who's the backup center on this team? We don't know, right? They don't have any interior. Like, Dillon Radins has not been a guy that snaps the ball. Daniel Brunskill, a little bit at times, but they've played him at right guard mostly here in Tennessee. Corey Levin's no longer under contract. They didn't draft an interior guy, right? So who's going to snap this ball? That's probably what Gadlin's thinking. He's got the most experience, quote unquote, of any of the UDFAs they signed at center. He proved he could play it at Shrine. That's his path to making this 53.
And he's a guy out of Liberty, so you might be thinking he was teammates with Malik Willis there at Liberty, but no, not so fast. He actually transferred to Liberty from Tulsa after the 2021 season, so did not overlap with Malik Willis. Not that that would matter, but an interesting little aside there if you were wondering if they played together. They did not. Anything else on Gadlin here, Justin, or should we move on to Steven Stilianos, a tight end from Iowa?
No, Steven Stilianos, a tight end from Iowa. This guy is a blocker through and through. I think there is no doubt about that. When you look up the offensive numbers, you might be shocked. So he's an older guy, played 4 years at Lafayette and then 2 years at Iowa. He had 8 catches in 2 seasons at Iowa total. All 8 came this year, so hey, maybe there's some upside there. His career high is 21 catches. He did that twice in 2019 and 2021, both at Lafayette. He's never reached 200 receiving yards in a single season. He is a blocker through and through. He's got good size, 6'5", 264. Here is the first insider note for you. I was told this was a Luke Stalker signing through and through. That assistant tight ends coach, Luke Stalker, loved this guy, pounded the table for him. UDFAs, this is your time to shine. As low-level assistant coaches, area scouts, they get to make these calls a lot of the time. And I heard that assistant tight ends coach, Luke Stalker, really likes this kid. Again, 4 years at Lafayette, 2 at Iowa. He's a blocker through and through. But something you guys haven't thought about probably, what's this team going to want out of the third tight end? Might be a guy that can play attached to the line of scrimmage, a guy that can block, help out the right tackle, help out your rookie left tackle, whatever it is. He's going to fight for that role, I think, with a guy who's the international pathway. The name just escaped me.
Thomas Odukoya.
He's probably going to, if that's the role they want for their third tight end. It's interesting because they signed 2 UDFA tight ends. We'll get to the other one in a second, but totally different profile, right, than this kid has. So depends what their flavor is for the third tight end. If it's a guy that's a block-only type, then this is going to be their guy.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, you look at the pedigree here from Iowa tight ends. These guys come into the league and are typically very good. I mean, there's been a lot of them that are very good pass catchers. George Kittle is the one that comes to mind, I think, as the number one guy in the NFL, but a ton of guys, tight end over there in Iowa. So the fact that he came from Iowa gives me a little bit of hope. And you wonder if this is who Rand Carthon was alluding to in the post-draft presser when they said, you guys only have 3 tight ends on the roster. You're going to do anything there? And he goes, well, we don't have 3 tight ends anymore. Check for more news coming soon. This isn't the only tight end UDFA that they signed, but you wonder if this guy was on the forefront of Carthon's mind when he made that comment.
And keep in mind, remember, Josh Whyle ended the season on IR, right, with a season-ending injury. Yeah. Like, we don't know who the 3rd tight end is on this team right now, and we got to see how healthy Wiley's going to be coming off IR here as the 2nd. So there's some competition for spots at tight end, and a very, very realistic path for this guy to make the 53.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So, all right, that is it for Steven Stilianos. We'll now move on to Robert Javier, DB out of Towson.
So I'll be honest, this one really caught my interest, almost more than a lot of the others, because when you're looking at the numbers, a lot of these other guys, as I said truthfully, with small, and I'm going to say it on others later, bad testers, not good testing numbers, or bad production, one or the other, right? With this kid, 28 PBUs and 6 interceptions across his 2 previous seasons at Towson. He's got decent size for the position at 5'11", 193. He put up 16 reps on the bench press. That's a decent strength, good play strength, good result for corners on the bench. 38.5-inch vertical, a really good vertical, okay? A good broad jump at 10.4. The 40 wasn't great. It was a 4.57, but it's not awful. And the 20-yard split was good at 2.58 on this kid, and a really good shuttle at 4.10, and a pretty damn good 3-cone at 6.96. Okay, so the production was good, the size is good, the testing was pretty good. That makes for an intriguing profile. Okay, now when you got those 3 things, obviously the competition wasn't great at Towson. He'll have to prove he can come in and play at a high level. And here's one fun fact for you. I thought this was hilarious, and I love trivia stuff like this. He was the first Towson cornerback, okay, to be all CAA since 2014. The last one to do it, Tennessee Titans legend Ty Smith. Okay, it's been a minute since Towson had a guy do it. Tennessee Titans legend Ty Smith was the last one to do it for them down there at Towson. I thought that was fun. Neither here nor there, but I thought it was funny. But again, the wheel starts spinning for me when I see good testing, good size, good production. This guy's got my interest.
And a couple stats you didn't mention there. He allowed a 38.6 reception rate, so completion percentage allowed 38.6, and just a 27.2 passer rating allowed into his coverage, which I believe is worse than if you just dirted the ball on every single play as a quarterback.
If you were playing in the CAA conference, no point targeting Robert Javier this past season.
Yeah, no chance at all. So we'll see if the step up in competition, how quickly he adjusts to that. But I do think there's a realistic shot for him to make this roster and unseat a guy like Eric Garror or Trey Avery, and he's listed as a DB. He's not even listed as a cornerback. So I wonder if they also see a potential versatility there. The Titans obviously have very little depth at safety. They don't even really have a second starter at safety right now, unless we just slot Elijah Molden into that spot. But I think there's this guy, because of the position he plays and the way the Titans roster is constructed, coupled with his size, his production, his testing, he had a 8.33 RAS score, which is near, it's not elite, but it's near elite.
Probably the best they had out of any UDFA. Up there.
Yeah, I would imagine. So because of those factors, I think he does have a realistic shot to make the team as like your 3rd safety, 4th safety, 5th cornerback type of role.
Well, I'll be curious to see if they cross train him like that, because I noticed the same thing you did, that he listed as a DB, but I couldn't find any evidence that he actually played any safety at Towson. So TBD on that. And it's also like a lot of these corners that haven't done it but moved to safety, it's because they're high-hipped guys, right? Like 6'4", 215. He's 5'11", 190. So he's got good size for corner. So, but we'll see on that. But I did find it. I honestly, I wondered if that was just people not knowing a ton about him, the reason they listed him at DB. But I couldn't find any evidence that he's actually played safety.
Interesting. All right, let's move on to Khalid Duke, a defensive end from Kansas State, a guy I saw a little bit of watching the Big 12 as a Texas fan last year. What do you know about Khalid Duke?
Yeah, you should be familiar with him. Played at a big program, and he was productive. This past year, career-high 6 sacks, think he leaves Kansas State with like 14 or 15 sacks total. I knew him pre-draft. Like, he was one of the guys I scouted, was familiar with. I had a borderline draftable grade on him. I thought there was a decent chance he'd be drafted. Titans were obviously interested in him. They gave him $52,000 in total guarantees. That was the second highest, to my knowledge, of all guarantees they gave to this UDFA class. $40,000 in guaranteed salary and a $12.5K bonus. So clearly interested in this guy. Career high 6 sacks this year. He's undersized, at 6'3", 246. That's one of the reasons he may have gone undrafted. And some of the testing, it was just okay. It wasn't terrible, but he didn't blow the lid off. A 4'7", 940, at 246 pounds, a 9'9" broad. That's solid. A 34-inch vertical I thought was solid. The shuttle was poor at 4'6", and the 3-cone was poor at 7'4", So the testing was a mixed bag. He's undersized, but he does come in as a productive guy that played high-level football at Kansas State. I thought he had some twitchiness to him on tape. I'm intrigued. They're obviously intrigued. 52,500 guaranteed.
Yeah, definitely interesting. I mean, kind of similar profile to Jalen Harrell, I think. You wonder if they were going back and forth in the draft room on which guy to pick and which guy to target as a UDFA. But another guy, just because of the lack of depth at defensive end, that I think has an outside shot to make the roster. I wouldn't say he has a great shot, but as good of any of the bottom 4 defensive ends on this roster have.
Jalen Harrell, you figure he pushes those guys at least, right?
Yeah, at least competes with those guys for a spot. And again, as I said earlier, I think special teams and ability to contribute there will play a role. All right, let's move on to Dillon Johnson, the running back out of Washington. One of the guys I was most excited to see as a UDFA for the Titans because I know him. I watched him play a lot of football over the last couple of years as a college football fan. So what do you know about this Dillon Johnson signing?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are probably familiar with this one, right? He plays this past season at who didn't watch Washington football? Who didn't watch that Washington offense this season? The most explosive offense in the nation. They advance all the way to the national championship. So this guy's at Mississippi State a couple of years ago, doesn't put up godly numbers, bets on himself, transfers to Washington, and explodes. They must have told him he was going to be their starting running back coming out of the portal. He rushes for what? I think it was nearly 1,200 yards and 16 touchdowns. I mean, what a year he had at Washington. I thought he was draftable. He's got, good size for the position at 5'11", 217. He's a powerful between the tackles runner. 24 reps on the bench press is outstanding for a running back. Outstanding. Now, again, it's the strength that catches you. It's not the athleticism necessary. A 4.68 40, not very good. Although, again, a theme here, the 10-yard split was pretty good at 1.57. The vertical's not good at 31.5 inches. The broad's not very good at 9.9. But again, a between the tackles runner, that's the type they've had at RB3 with a Julian Chestnut, a Hassan Haskins. They've, a different regime, I get it. But you typically like power and special teams versatility, a goal line type of guy, right? To be the third back. Dillon Johnson fits that profile. And by the way, I love his ability to play on third downs. I mentioned the play strength and the size. He can play in pass protection, and he caught the foot. He's got a lot of receptions under his belt. He does a great job catching the football. That's an intriguing thing about his profile to me. He had 150 catches at 3 years at Mississippi State, and he had 24 this past year at Washington. I don't know if you saw his tweet. He's coming here with a lot of passion and emotion. He talked about, being sad, crying, getting emotional after going undrafted. Yeah, I get it. These kids worked their whole life for this, and he had a great year at Washington. I'm sure he thought, I did everything I could do. I had 1,200 yards on the best offense. I had 16 touchdowns, right?
Yeah.
How could I go undrafted playing at the level that I played at, where I did it at? So, really intriguing signing again. I said it earlier. I'm going to say it again. Wide open competition at running back to me. He's the best of the undrafted running backs they signed. I see no reason to put Hassan Haskins or Julian Chestnut above him right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to bring up the post that he made because I want to read it word for word here. He said, "Today was the last day I let myself cry. My mind couldn't process what happened or what I did wrong. I worked my whole life to hear my name called, and for the last 4 years, I risked my body, mind for this game just to be disrespected. I will never fall short again. Every team that passed on me gonna feel me. With that being said, let's work Titans. So I love that attitude. It's like, I'm going to take this, I'm going to harness this disrespect that I feel and use it as a chip on my shoulder to prove the world wrong and prove every NFL team that didn't draft me why they should have drafted me. And you mentioned his stats there. I'm just going to read him off the exact stats that he had last season. 233 carries, so pretty much a bell cow guy for 1,195 yards, like you said, just under 1,200, and yeah, 16 touchdowns. And you mentioned his testing numbers, and he's not the most athletic guy for the position, but he did have a 53-yard touchdown run against USC last year, who, USC, not a great defense, but he had some breakaway runs. He had some 40-plus yard runs, and that goes along with 24 catches for 190 yards in the receiving game, that was his career low in receptions and second career low in receiving yards, because at Mississippi State for the 3 years before that, he was almost more of like a third down receiving back. He had almost as many catches as he had carries in each of the previous 3 seasons at Mississippi State. So you said it. I mean, he's a versatile guy, can make plays out of the backfield. He can be a short yardage or a goal line back. And I think if the unfortunate thing were to happen where you suffer an injury to Tyjae Spears or Tony Pollard, Dillon Johnson is a guy who can carry the ball between the tackles, who can make plays in the passing game. Like, I'm pretty excited for his chances to make this team. I think when you look at purely like college pedigree, because obviously we can't compare anything NFL-wise because he never played in the NFL, but like, he was a better college player, at least his last season in college, than a Julius Chestnut, than a Hassan Haskins, and some of these other guys. I mean, I know Hassan Haskins scored a lot of touchdowns too, but in college, I feel like Dillon Johnson was a name that you knew if you were a college football fan, and I don't know if you can say the same about Julius Chestnut and Hassan Haskins.
Well, Haskins played at Michigan. Everyone knew who Hassan Haskins was, and going into that draft. But no, certainly this guy had a great year, and I'm certainly a big fan of this side.
And with this signing, the Titans have a player, at least one player from all 4 of the the college football playoff teams. They took, obviously, J.C. Latham in the first round. There's your Bama guy. T'Vondre Sweat in the second round. There's your Texas guy. Jalen Harrell in the 7th round. There's your Michigan guy. And now Dillon Johnson, your Washington guy. So there was like a point made. I think somebody said somewhere, maybe it was Brian Callahan on a radio station, or somebody said somewhere that the Titans were targeting guys that played, or maybe it was something about the Bengals process. I don't remember exactly, but there was some report that the Titans wanted guys who had this big game college football playoff experience. And yeah, Dillon Johnson's just a UDFA. He's got a lot of competition to even make the roster, but it is funny to note that at least one player from all 4 of the college football playoff schools is now a Tennessee Titan. All right, let's move on to David Martin Robinson, a tight end out of Temple, because I saw some excitement on Twitter for this particular player after he was announced as a Titans UDFA.
Well, this is the interesting thing to me. Like I said, a totally different profile from the Iowa kid, right? They went for 2 different tight ends, and I think that was probably by design, right? And they'll decide which flavor they prefer for their final tight end on the roster, assuming one of them makes it. This guy's an athlete, a damn good athlete. The 40 he ran, outstanding, 4.65. The 10-yard split of 1.54 is actually elite for all tight ends historically. An elite shuttle as well at 4.08, and damn good verticals and broad, 35.5 vert, 9.10 broad. He played 6 years in college, so he's an older prospect, like a lot of these guys typically are when you go UDFA. He had his best year this past year, not surprised. This is, super senior year, so to speak. 40 catches for 537 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think the issue is here, he's undersized at 6'3", 247, and he doesn't have terrific play strength, and I think that was evident through the only 15 reps that he put up on the bench press. I'm excited about this signing. Don't get me wrong, I'm very excited, but I do think it's worth noting, I wonder if Titans fans are jumping a little bit here, because I keep thinking when I'm building out this roster, you look at what Chigakonkwo gives you, you look at what Josh Wiley gives you. I don't know that they're going to go for another, pass catcher as the number 3 tight end. I think they could use a guy that could block. It makes me feel like a Thomas Odukoya or the Steven Stilianos. Like, it makes me feel like they've got a better chance. Then again, if this guy goes out there throughout training camp and he's an elite athlete, he's constantly getting open, he's catching the football. Remember how Anthony Furtzer looked a couple years ago where you just couldn't keep him off the roster because he kept making plays throughout the summer? If this guy goes out there and does that, then he will play his way onto this football team.
Yeah, I agree. And you also have, like you mentioned, Josh Whyle coming off that injury. Like, we don't know exactly how healthy he is. So even if he's not being penciled in for a spot on the roster right now, he's going to potentially have more opportunity in these mini camps, in training camp, if Josh Whyle is slow to get back on the field, because someone's got to take those reps. And I don't know if you mentioned his stats or not. He had 40 catches for 537 yards and 4 touchdowns. And we talked about Robert Javier's RAS score being potentially the highest Titans UDFA score. Not so fast, my friend. David Martin Robinson scored an 8.73, so I think 0.4 of a point higher on the RAS. So maybe the most athletic guy they signed in as a UDFA. And I'm looking at his run blocking grades on PFF: 53.9 run blocking, 61.5 pass blocking this past season. So not a great blocker, like you said, but maybe something they can coach up there. All right, let's move on here to the kicker, Braden Narveson out of NC State. And I mentioned that this is one of the guys I was most excited to talk about, because what stands out to me about this kid is he made every single attempt he kicked between 40 and 49 yards. He did miss 5 field goals total last year, 18 for 23 on the season. Two of those misses were between 30 and 39 yards. 3 misses from 50 plus. But he also kicked through a 57-yard field goal. So a little Nick Folk-esque in the sense that he's very reliable inside 50. When you get beyond 50, it's a little bit more of a gamble, but he had some strength to boot through a 57-yarder. I think, they get him in there in training camp and see if they can work with him. Nick Folk is definitely your kicker for the 2024 season, but they get this guy on the practice squad. They work with him throughout the year and see if they can harness a kicker of the future here. Do you think Braden Narveson has a shot from that standpoint?
Well, this is an interesting one to me, because I'm going to give you my second insider tip on this one, some exclusive insider information here on the Music City Audible. Something I did not know, I don't think anyone knows. He was at the local day, so I did not know that he attended Titans local day. From what I understand, Coach Anderson, special teams coach, pounded the table for this kid. He loved him at the local day, built a really good rapport with him. He had a great performance at the local day. A special teams coach, Colt Anderson, walked away saying, "We need to get that guy. We need to get that guy." So this is a special teams coach signing. 18 to 23 this year, like you said, along 57, 78.3%, 71-91 all time for his career. But to me, from what I understand, it was the performance at the local day that really, really set him apart and brought the Titans' interest here.
Yeah, so interesting signing there. I think that he's probably, like I said, a practice squad guy. I definitely don't think he unseats Nick Folk this year, but an interesting name to keep an eye on. Let's move on to Cole Spencer, the offensive guard out of Texas Tech, a player who only ended up playing in 5 games last year. Started all 5 of those games at left guard and then suffered an injury, didn't play the rest of the season. A guy that probably would have been drafted, a day 3 draft pick, had he played out the whole season, I would assume.
Well, yeah, this is the one Titans fans I think are most familiar with, the one they're getting very excited about. You draw some dots here, $75,000 in total guarantees. It's the most they gave any UDFA to our knowledge, so that extremely, that jumps out at you initially. $65,000 in that a salary guarantee and only a $10K bonus. He played at Western Kentucky previously. He was actually a left tackle at Western Kentucky. That made him eligible to attend the local day, where there was a previous report, I reported it as well, that he met with Bill Callahan for like 2 hours after the local day. So I kind of knew this guy was going to sign with the Titans. I think the writing was on the wall there if he went undrafted. He had an outstanding workout at the Big 12 Pro Day, and that's a big stage now. The Big 12. He ran a 4.89. That would have been the best result of any lineman at the NFL Combine. In the 40, he leaped a 30.5 vert, a 9.4 broad. Okay, he's a fast guy, must not be strong, right? 30 reps on the bench press. Okay, this is an elite workout at the Big 12 Pro Day. You talked about the relative athletic score. Not so fast, my friend, like you said earlier.
Wow.
A 9.43 out of 10. So he's the best athlete. A 9.43. Best athlete the Titans signed in undrafted free agency. Look, the path here is simple. Number one, I'm going all over the place, but I think he would have been drafted if it wasn't for the injuries. Okay, he missed all of 2022 with a preseason leg injury, and then that's at Western Kentucky. He transfers to Texas Tech for 2023. They move him to left guard. He was playing tackle. That was a good move for him because he projects as an interior guy at the next level. He only plays 6 games before his season ends again due to injury. So the injuries are why he didn't get drafted. The tape is good. Athleticism's off the charts. Titans didn't draft an interior guy. That's important to note. Keep that in mind. No interior lineman drafted. They kept 6 interior guys last year on the initial 53. Let's say that's a bit much, probably an anomaly. Let's say they keep 5. I don't even know who the 5th one is this year. Right after Radence, Brunskill, Cushenberry and Skoronski. We don't know who the fifth one is, so there's a good chance it's going to be one of these UDFAs. We talked about the Liberty kid already. This guy's got a great chance. They had a lot of interest in him. Bill Callahan loves him. They gave him a ton of money by their standards this year. It was the most they gave. There were teams that gave out $200,000. They didn't come anywhere near that, but they gave him $75,000. It was the most they gave anyone. I certainly see a path here to interior offensive lineman number 5 for Cole Spencer.
Yeah, I totally agree. Between him, like you mentioned, the Liberty kid, and we have one more O-line guy we'll talk about here in a second. But first, Gabe Jeudy-Lally is the next guy we're going to cover. DB, who started his college career at Vanderbilt, transferred to BYU, and then transferred eventually to Tennessee last season. Started 11 games, played in all 13 games, started the final 11, so he earned his starting spot 3 games into the season. 41 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble, and 5 pass breakups, so it's ranked second on the Volunteers defense last year. Fairly productive. I mean, that's not uber ball production, but for an undrafted guy who changed schools 3 times, I mean, that's not a bad stat line there.
Yeah, and that doesn't include the bowl game, I think, because his final numbers were 47 tackles and 6 PBUs. He had an extra one there. He had a career-high 7 PBUs the year before, 2022 at BYU, where I thought he played the best ball of his college career. This is another one we saw coming in undrafted free agency. He was a name we knew because, again, he was at the local day, and we got reports of him staying like 2 hours past the day at the conclusion of the workout, where he met with special teams coach Colt Anderson. He fielded kickoffs and punts, by the way, for Coach Colt Anderson, so that was something intriguing because he hadn't done that in a few years, but they told him they foresee him potentially doing that. He also met with the assist PM after the conclusion of the local day, and I'm told even Brian Callahan took some time out to meet with him at the local day. So there was a lot of interest here from the whole regime. It was a no-brainer to me that he was going to sign here. In fact, I won't lie to you. I had the tweet ready in my drafts, like the Titans are signing Gabe Jeudy. Like, it was so obvious to me, I figured I'd be able to confirm it. $35,000 guaranteed for him, so not a bad little number either.
Nice, yeah. So that guy, again, as with the other DB we talked about, Robert Javier, a chance to make some noise at the back end of the roster. And the last thing I'll say about Gabe Jeudy-Lally is clearly a very smart kid. Was a 2023 CSC Academic All-District, 2023 Fall SEC Academic Honor Roll. You don't earn those honors without proving it in the classroom and being an intelligent kid. So shout out to him for that. Let's move on to Brian Dooley now, the O-lineman out of Eastern Michigan, and the last offensive lineman we'll talk about.
Yeah, so this is a height, weight, length guy. 6'5", 318, 34-inch arms. Wow. To my knowledge, he only played tackle at Eastern Michigan, but the Titans are going to cross-train him inside. So there's another little exclusive for you. He'll be playing some guard. I think the answer why is obvious. This is not a good athlete. This is not a guy that has the foot speed to protect the edge at the next level. He ran a 5'6", 540. That is not a good time by any stretch. A 1.86 10-yard split. The RAS score was a 2.79. Okay, so it is what it is. 5 years at school. The testing is really poor, but again, a lot of experience. And the height, weight, length. I mean, 6'5", 318, 34-inch arms. Those are great measurements. They are going to cross train him. He is going to play some guard at rookie minicamp. He's got to, right? A 5'6", 540. You're not playing tackle at the next level. I'd say of the 3 linemen, I think I'd rank him maybe last, right? But we never know, these things go in, and he might be the best guard of the 3 of them, right? They're going to find out at rookie minicamp, but certainly the athletic profile is not good enough. It's concerning, but you wonder about what he could do there as he kicks inside, maybe hide some of those deficiencies. Because again, you love the size.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go. Another guy with a back-end shot to maybe make the roster, but to me projects more of a practice squad guy with those athletic scores. Let's talk about the next guy, Isaiah Iton, D-line from Rutgers, the only D-line UDFA the Titans brought in, despite having a semi-weak position group there in terms of depth. They obviously draft Tavondre Sweat in the second round, so filling some of that and pushing other guys down in roles. But what do you make of Isaiah Iton?
Well, number one, $40,000 in total guarantees for him, so he might have been the 3rd highest paid one they got. He's undersized to play inside. That's where he played a lot at Rutgers. He's only 6'2", 277. Or he was at the pro day. I think Rutgers listed him at 290, but at pro day he was 277. He's got 34-inch arms and hands larger than 10 inches. So there are some great measurements on this kid. He put up 29 reps on the bench press. Okay, so play strength is not an issue despite the size. 32.5 inch vertical, 9.3 broad. Those are good results. What was poor was the shuttle, a 4.84 shuttle, and we didn't get a three cone or 40 time on him. Another thing that sort of makes you raise your eyebrows, although it's more common, in today's college football world, NIL, 4 different schools. He was at Northern Colorado. He then went the JUCO route to Hutchinson Community College. He was a rotational player at Ole Miss. Maybe didn't, last that, maybe wasn't good enough to get into the mix there. Transfers to Rutgers where he hopes to get more play time. Not a lot of sack production on the resume, but you wonder if there's some untapped potential there. You love you love some of the measurements with the 34-inch arms and the 10-inch hands. Again, a little undersized. I think they'll probably think of last year they had guys like Shackle Brown, TK McClendon Jr., where they played them more outside. I imagine that's what you'll see from this kid at rookie minicamp.
And yeah, you mentioned the sack production. Only half a sack this past season, half a sack the year before that, 1 sack his freshman year at Northern Colorado. So 2 total sacks in his career. PFF credited him with just 4 total pressures in all of last season. So more of a 2-down guy, the kind of guy that you get as a UDFA and not the kind of guy you spend a second-round pick on, whereas we're not going to rehash the debate there. But T'Vondre Sweat, definitely a much more productive pass rusher than Isaiah Iton here. So I think that, you mentioned it there. I think there is a spot for him potentially if he proves himself in training camp. I'm not saying he's definitely making the team or anything like that, but just given the lack of depth there, he has a shot. And I think that that's kind of been a common theme here is pretty much all of these guys so far have a shot to make the back end of a weak position group because the Titans don't have a lot of depth across the entire roster. And they don't have, for the first time in my memory, no wide receiver UDFA, no QB, none of these positions where they're set as a UDFA there. So the guys that they did bring in, they all have a chance to earn a role. Let's talk. We got 3 more guys to get through here. Rob Gattison, the cornerback out of Western Carolina. Let's do this one a little quickly.
Yeah, a lot of production. 121 career tackles, 20 PBUs, 5 interceptions, 8 TFLs, 3 sacks in 4 years. Those are great numbers. Good size at 6 foot, 199 pounds. That's great size for the position. And good play strength, 16 reps on the bench press. And it pops up on tape. You can see he's a big, strong kid. Didn't test well. There's always a caveat here. A 4.6 40. Splits weren't very good. The shuttle, the 3-cone, the vertical, the broad, I'll be honest, none of it was very good. The bench press was the best result at 16 reps. Again, good size for the position and good numbers across the board. Was a very productive player in 4 seasons at Western Carolina.
Yeah, and same story, different player with the cornerback depth there. A chance to compete for the 5th or 6th guy with Trey Avery and Eric Garror. All right, next guy on the list, Keaton Ellis, DB, is how he's listed from Penn State. Played safety at Penn State, so right off the bat, I'm thinking he has a shot to make the roster just because of the Titans' lack of depth at safety.
Yeah, he was a 5-year guy at Penn State. He was rotational, in and out of the lineup, not an every down contributor or starter. Bit undersized at 5'11", 185. But here's a different, a bit of a theme. A pretty good athlete. He ran a 4.46 40 at the pro day. That's a good result. Although the splits weren't good, which I found a little odd. But a 4.46 40, a good vertical at 39 inches, a good broad jump at 10.9. The shuttle was not good at 4.15, nor was the 3-cone at 7.12. But, some good athletic numbers. You talked about the depth at safety, big-time football under his belt, 5 years at Penn State. You love that experience.
Yeah, and he was named a team captain for Penn State this past season, so a guy with some leadership qualities. All right, last guy on the list here, Jordan Terrell, running back from Barton College, which I must confess, I did not know that existed.
Well, you probably don't know where that is, and you're going to write off his chances. Don't be so quick. Remember, you didn't know where Sacred Heart was either when they signed Julius Chestnut, and he's going into, year 4? This was a D2 back, Jordan Terrell is, that was uber productive. Nearly 5,500 rushing yards, 44 touchdowns at Barton College. He had 1,600 plus rushing yards every season he was there. So really productive. He's also really, really small, 5'7", 213, really small. Didn't test well either. He did put up 21 reps on the bench, which I think is a great result for a 5'7", 213 guy. But again, I said it with Jabari Small earlier, a 4.6 40. I think you'd like a bit more speed when you're 5'7", 213, 4.3 shuttle, 7.17 3-cone, 35-inch vert, 10-foot broad. Really small, athletic profile, not good enough for that size, but uber productive coming out of Barton.
Uber productive. Can I just read off his stats here? I mean, as a freshman in 2020, he only played in 4 games, only had 72 carries for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns and 3.9 yards per carry. But after that, it's like Does it get more productive than this? 2021 averaged 167.5 yards per game. 2022, 148.4 yards per game. 15 touchdowns in each of the 2021 and 2022 seasons, 11 touchdowns in 2023, 157.5 yards per game rushing on the ground, 5.6 yards per carry in 2021, 5.4 yards per carry in 2022, 6.5 yards per carry in 2023. I mean, this is as productive as it gets, and he's also a receiver. I mean, he's not a hugely productive receiver, but 16 catches, 191 yards, and a touchdown through the air last year. And if you look at just like his box score, the longest runs he had in a season, 2021 82-yard run, 2022 81-yard run, 2023 65-yard run, 2023 37-yard catch. So this is a guy that, I mean, he was just super productive, and obviously we'll have to see if that translates to the NFL level. But another guy where if I was super excited about Dillon Johnson, I mean, I've never watched a second of Jordan Terrell's tape, so I'm just being a box score watcher right now, and I apologize to our listeners for me being that. But the numbers get you excited here that this guy could potentially have a role as an RB3 type of guy, or maybe even like as a kick returner guy. I mean, 81-yard touchdown run, like that shows some breakaway speed there, even if it was against lesser athletic competition.
Certainly. I'm excited to see all these guys in rookie mini camp within the next week, I think, week and a half. So we'll be back with reports from them, what we're hearing. Can't wait to see all these kids in their jerseys practicing with the team. And of course, the guys they actually drafted too. Oh yeah, they matter a little bit as well. So really excited for what's on the horizon here.
Yeah, as am I. So a quick recount here just to wrap things up. The Titans signed 3 running backs, 3 DBs, which could be safety or cornerback, 1 for sure cornerback, 3 offensive linemen, 2 tight ends, 1 defensive end, 1 defensive lineman, and 1 kicker. That makes up the 15-man UDFA class. And again, I think all 15, I would say 14 of the 15 have a realistic shot to make the back end of the roster. I would say the kicker does not have a realistic shot to unseat Nick Folk, but is a very good practice squad candidate, almost a certain practice squad candidate, unless he suffers a training camp injury or is just completely terrible during training camp, which is definitely on the table. But I think that's a good class for the Titans. They got a lot of guys that you could see a potential role for. Obviously, not all 14, like not all 3 DBs, not all 3 offensive linemen, not all 3 running backs are going to make it, but one of those from each position group has a pretty good chance. So excited to see how this all unfolds. All right, that'll do it for this one. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hope this is a nice, breakdown of the UDFA class for the Titans. A nice little primer for you to get to know all these guys. We'll be back soon, like Justin said, talking about rookie minicamp. If the Titans happen to make a free agent signing in the next couple hours or days, we'll definitely have an emergency reaction pod to that. Hello, Tyler Boyd. Is he going to be a Titan? Hopefully. We'll see. We didn't even mention Tyler Boyd visited the Titans, I think on Wednesday night. He posted on Instagram that he was in Nashville. I think he was visiting the Titans on Thursday. So we'll see if a deal is imminent there, and if so, we will hop back on to record. So thanks to everyone. Thanks everyone even more if you're watching us on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to the Music City Audible channel. Give this video a like, thumbs up, and turn on alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new video. Thanks also again to our sponsors, Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville and Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. Check out the sinkersbeverages.com website. Sign up for the In-Crowd. In-Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, early access to barrel releases, exclusive events, and more. And Sinkers Beverages is also on Uber Eats. So if you don't have time to head to the store, just load up the Uber Eats app, search Sinkers Beverages, and have all the booze you need delivered right to your door. All right, Justin, that'll do it. Thanks again to everyone. We'll be back soon. And until then, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.